the systole. You're going to hear that word for a while today. That's why I give that clip. And when it relaxes, it's called diastole. Now, contraction, a Greek word for systole. So you're going to hear that over and over again. And relaxation, a Greek word for diastole. So oftentimes when we say blood pressures are measured, you see they throw two figures at you, right?
Yeah.
So the systole means the blood pressure measured when the heart is doing what? Contract. Right? And the systole is the pressure is still there, but the heart is what? Relaxing. You get that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go even if you just get a thought of what it is. That's it. So for emphasis, I'm going to repeat that again. A systolic blood pressure is a blood pressure measured when the heart is contracting. Okay? And a diastolic pressure is still a pressure of the heart when that blood is measured when what? When the heart is relaxed. Okay. Now we have this. In other words, what is blood pressure? Let's stand for a while. Sometimes we just use words and I think people will understand. You saw the way the heart was contracting there, right?
Yeah.
That's the way it contracts and contracts several thousands of times, billions of times in a year. Whether you're sleeping, whether you're running, whether anything. The moment it stops, that's it. So, in other words, we're saying that there is a force that is generated each time the heart contracts. There's a force that pushes. And that force will continue to go along. Even when the heart relaxes, that force is still there. Right? Yeah. So let's say a normal person, 120/80, most of us are used to that word. That's the upper extreme of normal. The range is actually 90/60 to 120/80. So when the heart contracts, you have a blood pressure measured of 120. And when the heart relaxes, you still have a blood pressure measured, which is what? 80. Most times that 80 blood pressure is enough to do everything that we want to do. So if peradventure you have a cut on your hand that is big enough to cut a vessel, that jet that comes is about the 80 that we see. So it's sustained, it's very good, right? That is what the normal thing should be. So even though the heart is relaxing, there is still a pressure that's very important. We're going somewhere. Because we do know that sometimes the pressure can be a little lower. And when it does, what happens? For example, let's say, Big Timmy ate some nuts about a couple of weeks ago. He was allergic to it. Whatever system in his body just completely collapsed the blood vessel. And when I was speaking with Mom, he was running something like 70/30 or something. If nothing was done to push the blood pressure back up, the heart would stop. Right? So there is something called low blood pressure. Oftentimes we don't talk about that when it does happen. When people bleed in accidents and you don't stop the blood very quickly, you bleed all the blood and the blood pressure becomes low and cannot be recovered. Why? Once the blood in the heart supplies every part, but about 40% of what it pushes out goes to the brain. So if he can't do his work, what suffers first? The brain. And when you can't think, it's as bad as nobody. Okay? So it's very important that each time the heart contracts, it's sending about almost half of the whole blood to the brain. Because every center in the brain controls a whole lot of stuff, including the heart itself. Right? Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. Now, I want to talk about hypertension. Why do I want to do this? It's so epidemic. Some guys will call it pandemic. Well, you're going to see a couple of figures that I will throw in here, not from me, but even from, Center for Disease Control, National Blood Institute and Heart Control. There's so many things to show that high blood pressure is the #1 killer of man. Alarm. Does anyone know anyone that has high blood pressure? Hypertension. Same. Anyone knows? I'm not saying you. If it's you, I'm not asking you to declare. But my dad was diagnosed with hypertension almost 44 years ago. And they gave him some very little things. First, make sure you take your medications. Make sure you cut some weight back. He had just gone to Britain, and he's never left. He increased so much. If you saw his picture before and after, he was only in Britain for 1 year, and he became like 4 times the size when he left Nigeria. He came back, and I remember Dr. Gosh told him almost 40-something years ago, if you want to, be around to see your children marry and go to college, you better drop some of these pounds. You better make sure that you control your blood pressure. Those are very simple things they told him. To God be the glory. This is 78, going on 79. He doesn't play with his meds. He does not. I know him. He does not. And he's done so many other things to keep that alive. So in other words, hypertension, it's not something to say you're going to die. Unfortunately, it's the #1 killer of man all over the world. I'm told the statistics is incredible. Almost 500,000 every year because of unmanaged high blood pressure. So I'm talking about this because we're going to look about something that affects about 1.5 billion, B for boy, people. Billion people all over the world. It's a lot. It's something that's pandemic. Let's go to the next slide.